Hello, everyone. So we should be going live here on Twitter and YouTube. Just making sure the Twitter stream looks good. See if we've got YouTube going as well. Where is YouTube? All right, so I don't know if YouTube is up, but Twitter is definitely going. So yeah, we're gonna chat. We're gonna chat about Sound XYZ and the newsletter this week, and hopefully have some people jump up and share their experience with music NFTs, what they're excited about, concerns, what's been keeping them going during the bear market. But yeah, I figured this would be a good way to give everyone kind of like a sneak peek before the newsletter actually comes out tomorrow. And we'll play around with the format, but wanted to find some new ways to get you guys all the good stuff. So let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, so you can see my newsletter, which will be coming out at 8 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. But if you are listening to this live stream or watching, then you get an early sneak peek. So quickly, just in terms of some housekeeping. So I'll be headed down to Miami tomorrow on Monday for Metaverse Miami and Art Basel. If you are hearing about Metaverse Miami for the first time or curious about Metaverse Miami, very cool type of conference that's being built really from scratch and rethinking how we develop conferences. Anyone who's spent like any time in Web3 is probably like filled to their gills with conferences. There's things that we like, that we don't like. It feels like there's a new conference popping up every day, but I am very excited about Metaverse Miami, in large part because it is created by Kenobi, who is a Doodles OG, has been in the space, has done the work to really build relationships with everyone in Web3. And so I have a high degree of confidence that they're going to execute. And I had the opportunity to sit down with him in a episode of the One Big Idea podcast, which dropped last week. So definitely check that out. In the newsletter, I've got the link out to YouTube. Also of note, I've been uploading everything to LensTube. So if you're on Lens, make sure to give me a follow. You can collect all of the NFT links there as well. A little bit of alpha for the rest of the season. You'll only be able to collect the NFT or the episodes as NFTs on Lens. So just something that I'm experimenting with. There'll be a set amount of editions. I believe I set it to 10 editions, 0.03 ETH each. So in line with the previous ones, and they'll be available until they sell out. So if you are listening, that's where to go for them. I'm not going to be broadcasting it too much. I kind of like the idea of it being a bit of an Easter egg. So, when we're on season 5, 6, 7, 8, if there's still any of these left, and, hopefully the podcast continues to grow, these will be something that will be, looked after. So that's just a little bit of alpha for you. But yeah, you can also read it directly in the newsletter here. Yeah, let's dive in. So, last November, so NFT NYC 2 times ago. It's pretty challenging because it wasn't 2 years ago, but it was 2 NFT NYCs ago because it keeps changing when the actual NFT NYC was. But 2 NFT NYCs ago, I went to New York with Susie Rue, who is the co-founder of Venice Music and a lovely human who I was working with at the time, and went to New York City for NFT NYC. At that time, our objective was to leave the conference with a clear North Star for our Web3 strategy. We had been really tackling what Web3 at Venice was going to look like for about 9 months at this point, started in February with all of the buzz that was going on around music NFTs with Blau and Verite and RAC all having pretty big drops. And then that big article that came out about Spotty Wi-Fi and Pigeon and Planes. There's a lot of heat going on in that winter. And really since then, we were heads down, trying to make sure that we were entering the space intentionally, knowing that there was something there. And NFT NYC was kind of the first opportunity for us to meet a lot of the people that we had spoken with online in person. So it was kind of a like watershed moment. And as much as you can spend, all of your time on Clubhouse at the time in the early days and then Twitter Spaces, there's nothing that really compares to meeting in person. Hence why I'm going down to Miami this week and try to be a fixture at a lot of these conferences. So recommend, if you haven't gone, to definitely check them out. So yeah, this proved to be pretty foundational, I think, in the space for many of us. I think looking back, I was in New York a couple of weeks ago talking with Vanessa Magos, who's the manager of Verite. We had like our first blind coffee date in terms of like figuring out if there'd be a working relationship between Venice and Verite at that time. We had sat down with Trevor McPheedries of FWB, one of the co-founders, to talk about DAOs. Met Aiden Cullen of the Heart Project after being a fan of his, buying one of his NFTs, being in the Discord, to splitting a cab with him and going to a bunch of events, and ultimately ended up doing some business together between the Heart Project and Venice, to getting Mediterranean food with Alex Cyber of Catalog. Now Venice is one of the curation partners at Catalog, which I know they are very, very proud of, to turning up at a coffee shop that Nate Jones, who is one of the founding team members at Royal, had turned into a like DJ booth. And so people were coming in and out, and it was all these different backgrounds of people learning and growing. And so that was a great opportunity to learn more about Nate, learn more about Royal. A lot of these like big names who are now like paving the way for a lot of people in Web3, with the opportunity to really meet with and connect with. And, one meeting that I didn't bring up in particular has been replaying in my mind a lot over the past couple of weeks. I remember prior to meeting this individual, I had been reviewing some mock-ups of a new music NFT platform, and the design felt very familiar yet new, in that I was looking at these like big, like two-tonal sound waves that would be on the screen. And they change as it's being played. There were all of these individual little profile pics that like marked where someone had made a comment, and so it instantly, the UI was like recognizable to me as SoundCloud. That would end up being Sound XYZ, and so I mentioned here in the newsletter, it was like SoundCloud with a twist. The way that you got onto one of those little profile pics was minting an NFT, which gave you the ability to join the seat at the table and be able to leave a comment directly on there. And so it was a way of like accessing social. Inherently, like I was a bit skeptical. My question being like, why would people pay for the ability to mint? Or the ability to have social? That seems like a nice to have, but is that something that really people are going to be, spending their hard-earned money on so that they can leave a comment on someone's page? That value prop didn't really make sense to me. And in addition to that, not only did that seem incredibly niche, but just if you look at pure consumption, it's objectively worse, right? Like we have the ability to have an all-you-can-eat buffet in our pockets. Like we have Spotify, and we have people that are creating playlists for us, and it is just like an overwhelming sea of content. So why would we like go lean in, pick songs individually? It doesn't immediately resonate. The value prop for the artist was instantly clear, right? The ability and the narrative that took hold in the early Sound XYZ days is I was able to make X amount of months or X amount of years of Spotify royalties in 10 seconds by selling a couple ETH worth of music NFTs. Like that rings true. Definitely understood that. But would there be enough people on the other side, because you're building a marketplace, would there be enough collectors who also valued this new means of consumption? And so I wanted to kind of do like a post-mortem of where we're at, because it's been about a year. And so since that time that I sat with David last November, there are now almost 6,000 unique collectors who have purchased over 8.7 million of Sound XYZ NFTs. So that's both secondary and primary. And we've got a little graph here, or a little dashboard courtesy of Nico.eth, shout out to him, showing how many songs have been minted. There's almost 30,000 songs have been minted. The average collector has almost 4 songs. We're almost at 6K, and then the primary, and you can see the really healthy secondary volume as well. It's almost double what the primary is. All of this is made incredibly interesting by the fact that we are in the middle of a bear market. Every single project that I'm looking at, by and large, is churning holders, is watching their floor price go down. We're getting a little bit of a resurgent bull right now. I expect that to be short-lived, and a lot of that is being driven by the Yuga news, the trial of Jimmy the Monkey that's going to be coming, and so they're making up a significant amount of NFT volume. But by and large, it's been a slog, and so it's really interesting to see that Sound has actually been able to add more and more holders. They've been able to add more and more mints and artists and volume at a time when it's pretty challenging. It's pretty rough in the streets right now. And so that really made me reflect and try to understand what is responsible for this growth. Why is this happening? And I've been fortunate enough to be a collector in the Sound community for a little bit, and thinking through what I believe to be the key metrics for success. I would call them community, context, and clout. You combine all 3 of those, which we'll go into each one individually, with the ability for the central team to ship. I think that's why you can make the case that Sound is building a lurking juggernaut. If music NFTs are to take off, I certainly expect Sound to be at the forefront. So let's go into each of these. So community. When I first looked at these mockups, I did not anticipate community, or I had seen the idea of audience and social on pages, and that in and of itself wasn't community to me. That was the ability to comment. That didn't seem like that novel or something that would be a sticky value prop of why people would want to come back. I still pretty much hold to that. While people comment, I tend not to. But really where the community is being built is everything around the drop. And that's the piece that I initially didn't get, that I very much am aware of now. And so what we're really seeing is the evolution of the fan club. If you think back to even the Blog Boy era, fan clubs were usually unilateral communication between an artist and their fans, right? It was a way for them to get out information. You think about the Facebook pages of old. You would go like a Facebook page, and then you would get updates from an artist, and you would receive those passively, and then go take action, go buy tickets, merch, whatever. It was not actually building something where the artist was on the same playing field as their collectors, or their passive audience in this case. What I think is really interesting is that we're seeing a bunch of symbiotic group chats emerge from Sound mints, where an artist, as part of their release strategy, is minting on Sound and then inviting and token gating all of those collectors into a group chat, whether it's on Telegram or Discord, usually gated by something like Guild, and really fostering conversation there. And not always just about the art. It's just generally hanging out, sense of belonging. You're surrounded by people that have a shared sense of belief in music. And so there's just a lot of commonality that I think drives those bonds. And I've seen, it feels like it's pretty standard to the playbook now, where if you're releasing on Sound for the first time, I'll see a DM after of, hey, don't forget to join the Discord. You have access now because you have an NFT. And that's been really, really interesting to see develop, because unlike other NFT projects where everything is financial speculation at the forefront, and I'm not saying that there's not speculation in music NFTs. I think most collectors, that will make up at least part of why they're purchasing, in addition to the patronage and everything else. But it is much more in the background. I think most people that are doing this are anticipating having to hold these for a decent amount of time as the market develops, as these artists develop, right? Because you're also making a bet in the artists themselves. But it's been great to see these communities really bloom around these individual artists, and really for them to, if Web 2 is a bit of a megaphone, Web 3 with these communities feels a bit like a campfire, where they just have a seat in the campfire as the same as anyone else. And so, that can lead to all different sorts of collaborations and discussions and friendships. And it's been really interesting to develop, not only these group chats, but I think one of the more important things that communities develop over time is a sense of language. And I'm starting to see that in sound as well. And so there's two instances literally from this past weekend that I can point to in terms of a community developing its own language. One, there has been a bot on a bunch of sound mints, 7026, at least we believe them to be a bot. They've minted multiple mints in mints that have like instantly sold out, which seems to mean that they probably are about a bot, and they have like a very funny PFP. And so that turned into a discussion of like interrogation, trying to figure out who 7026 was. In a group chat, Rio Cragen, who's a big, not only artist, but also collector on Sound XYZ, ended up making like a free joke mint on Zora, and it got over 2,000 collects like within the span of a few hours. And so that's one case where like you're starting to see the community within sound develop their own language, develop their own inside jokes. This is always something that's a key indicator of a sense of belonging. And then two, I was minding my own business the other day and got a FaceTime from some of the key holders and artists on sound interrogating me to see if I was Carl, which is an expected alt account, not confirmed alt account, but seems pretty obvious that it is an alt account with the way that they're communicating, who they follow, how they're minting, what they hold. And so those type of, and there's an example here of Daniel Allen in this Carl group call, which if you click in when the newsletter comes out, you can see a bunch of different faces of people that were joining that. So it's been really fascinating to see the community develop, again, not from the platform itself. I think that's really just been a like launch pad. So once you acquire the NFT, the community is everything that goes on in between the releases, not really what's happening at time of mint. Okay, so the second C is number 2, context. This was a very nostalgic piece for me to write, and you can see if you're familiar and you're like a mid-20 to 30-year-old, you probably recognize Wheelchair Jimmy, otherwise known as Drake, and his initial mixtape of Comeback Season. I was in 10th grade when this came out. So there's some background to all this. If you're in like the millennial area, like you're old enough to remember the Blog Boy era, whether it was Pigeon and Planes, Two Dope Boys, DJ Booth, all stood out at the forefront of music culture. Like people weren't listening to traditional publications. Music was like linked to mixtape sites like Dat Piff and the unlicensed streaming service SoundCloud, which is now making a comeback, hopefully through sound. To be a music lover at this time, I distinctly remember it was very lean in. Like you were a futuristic crate digger, and you were always trying to find the new sound before the next person. You wanted to be first to it. To the point about Drake, not to toot my own horn, but I did find this Comeback Season when it came out. I was in 10th grade in history class, sitting at the back, like listening, wondering how this guy who I knew from Degrassi as Wheelchair Jimmy, how on earth he had gotten Trey songs on his mixtape. I would say that Drake has done pretty well on his own since then. But everything was about the context and the story around what you were finding, what was hot, who were these people. You would go onto the blogs every day and you would read, about this release, and it would give it color. And so you really started to like identify different artists and their stories and backgrounds. And music had, really just to summarize it, music had context. Like every artist had a story, every discovery had meaning to it, of how you interacted with that music for the first time. They were real moments. In the streaming era, we've lost a lot of this context just by nature of how music is consumed often. And I'm guilty of this. It's good in a lot of respects. You're throwing on a playlist that's created by an algorithm and just passively taking in music while you're going about and doing your other things, going about your day. And maybe you go and you like some songs. You're like, oh, I like that one. And you don't really know anything else about it. You probably couldn't even name the artist. And then you're your like songs become this like massive graveyard of content that you listen to once or twice and then never went back to. And it's wholly disorganized, and really you lose a lot of the ability to go back and rediscover that music. And so, and with a lot of this, and it's great in a lot of respects, right? Like people are listening to more music than ever before. They're able to discover more artists than ever before. There's a lot more artists that are able to make at least some money than ever before. If you just think about the limitations of like physical distribution to where we are today, there's a lot of inherent good in streaming. And so like, this is not to villainize streaming by any means. But I do think in a way, streaming has caused distribution to, or caused music to lose its soul a bit. Like distribution, how we're receiving content, we're not getting the same emotional resonance with music as we used to. And that's what's really exciting to me about sound, because the context is rushing back to the foreground. Each drop is given dedicated space to be celebrated. It's a moment that's captured in time. I know David, the co-founder of Sound, up until recently was doing a Twitter Spaces for every single sound drop that came out. Obviously, you can't scale that as it continues to go out, but it meant something, and it still means something. Of each drop is a way to bring everyone together. Before you even are able to purchase the NFT, there is a listening party that takes place. So everyone is listening to the music. It gives you an opportunity to read through the artist profile page, the release detail page, and get an understanding of why this was created and what context, what for, and learn more about these artists over time. And so, you know, in a time where millions of songs are being uploaded to streaming services, it's nice that there, at most right now, there may be like a dozen releases a week on Sound, maybe a couple dozen at the absolute cap. So you can really get to learn the backstory behind every drop and behind every artist. And these stories are cherished. Like you get to know more about everything that was involved in actually putting the song together. So there's a great deal of intentionality. And I think that leads to collectors building a real sentimental value with their collections, which then in turn leads to them wanting to hold those songs because it means something to them. While they're still sure they can be speculative assets, you see a lot less of like very short-term flipping and a lot more holding, in part, I think, because of that context. And then third, clout. So everything on the internet, for the most part, is status driven, particularly when it comes to NFTs. I think what Sound got right is not shying away from that fact that social products are status driven, and participants need a way to demonstrate their success. So I thought it was really intelligent for them to showcase collectors up front and treat them with reverence in a way that I don't think a lot of other products necessarily do. So there was always, from the beginning, an emphasis on collector features. And one of the big places that you see this play out is on the collector profile. So if you are watching along, you can see my collector profile. The top of it right here shows what my featured sound was, or sound is. Mine is Lyra and the Leaves. It's a banger of a track, so highly recommend checking it out. And how many they've collected, how many artists I've backed, and then where I rank in the top collectors. This top collectors badge is so genius in how it gamifies wanting to collect. It kind of pisses me off because you never want to see that number go down. You don't want to go from like 44th to 50th to 60th. Like you want to see that number continually go up. And so there is an element of gamification that I think that they've done enough and not too much where it becomes gimmicky. So kudos on that. And then also, I didn't put it here, but you can see both trending artists. So who has collected the most amount of ETH in a set given time, whether that's 7 days, 30 days, all time, and also collectors. And so you can see yourself moving up and down the ranks. And yeah, I put here, I've got 82 collected sounds, which I feel is an achievement, although Cooper Turley would have you believe otherwise and said I can't sit with him until I have 100 collected sounds. So I look forward to the day that we get to sit at lunch together, Coop. It'll be a good time. But yeah, these pages are a bit of status symbols. It instantly gives credibility to collectors of, I was here, I'm this big of a supporter, I was here this early, I supported this artist at this time. You're able to really bring a lot of provenance to these actions, which further help validate your support. So whether it's being early, which on Sound looks like collecting the first drops, collecting Genesis drops of different artists, being consistent, so showing up in that like trailing 7-day or 30-day on a consistent basis, and then being the most significant, like collecting the most NFTs, which good luck catching Coop. I think he's up to like 800 NFTs at this point, and then Coop Records is like chasing his tail, so it will be a little bit challenging there. And clout can also come from demonstratable taste. So a new feature that was launched recently is the creation of playlists, both creating playlists from your own content and from your own collection, and also creating playlists for more broadly for any release that's been on Sound. And so for me, I've created a Sad Boy playlist. Anyone that knows me, I lived 5 years in Seattle. It rains a lot. There's a lot of Sad Boy music. So if you want to check out my Sad Boy playlist, feel free to click on the link and you can follow me for more Sad Boy vibes. All right, so we went through the 3 C's, which again were community, clout, and context. And then finally, that's all packaged together with shipping, a team that ships. So I've a little bit of my background. I've been a product manager for several years at Venice Music. This idea of product market fit is a bit of a misnomer. When you talk to people, it seems like something that's static, like you work and work and work and then you achieve product market fit. But the market is always moving. The wants and needs of the market is always moving. And so as a product manager, your responsibility is to continually meet and exceed the expectations in the market. And that requires a product that continually evolves with the market itself. And so I think like no team in music NFTs does this better than Sound, with their ability to consistently ship meaningful products that are useful to the entire ecosystem. A couple examples of this: the Sound protocol, which allows any artist to mint on the Sound contract and use the creation of golden eggs, the limited supplies, the pre-sales, everything that you can do on Sound XYZ, because it is a gated platform. It gives that empowerment to artists. Because I think one of the big chief complaints has been, I can't get on Sound. And a lot of that has been due to wanting to maintain those magical moments of each drop and maintain the flow of increasing engagement at a healthy clip that isn't overwhelming for collectors and artists alike. And so being able to then give tools to the artists to go and do this themselves, I think was a very meaningful product to deliver. Pre-sale is part of that as well. So, okay, you're an artist that has multiple releases. Can you then reward past collectors by having a pre-sale? I think that's been a great way of getting collectors to return time and time again, because they do get that special access for being an early supporter. Typically also is at a bit of a cheaper price point as well. Playlist we talked a little bit about earlier, and an activity feed, which was a pretty meaningful shipment this past week, which I've got linked out here. But the ability to see real-time activity of everything happening on Sound, you can curate it however you please. So if you just want to look at people that you're following, if you just want to look at people that are creating playlists, if you want to look at secondary sales, it's a way of tracking what is going on in the Sound ecosystem. It was also gamed a little bit, again, by our good friend Rio last week. He had a release that had not minted out at the time of the activity feed dropping. And so along with a few others had basically gamed the activity feed to have it show up at the top of the activity. They did this by creating different playlists, minting. And so there was a point in time after that, I believe when he started doing it, I believe there were like 30 available. And it sold out within like the next 5 hours after. As it just continued to show up on the activity feed, people got curious. They would look, oh, this is a release by Rio, who is like very notable on the platform. I'm going to go ahead and mint that. And so, yeah, it sold out pretty soon after that. Yeah. And then finally, conclusion, this is still very much a nascent space, right? If we were looking at the size of sound overall, it would be roughly, in terms of total volume, it would equate to a top 600 project on OpenSea. So it's still very, very, very early. The holder count, which we mentioned is approaching 6,000, that's roughly akin to a 10,000 PFP project. And then again, like outside of my echo chamber, a lot of my peers don't get music NFTs, and that's totally acceptable and okay. A common refrain that I get is, I understand why this is good for artists, but like, how is this going to be a better consumer experience? I think a few ways in which it's going to be, actually, let me take that back. It's not so much that it's better as it is uniquely prepared to handle things that Spotify and streaming are not. It's not trying to be the next Spotify. It's not trying to be the next Apple Music. It's not trying to be the next Amazon. Like, we have a pretty damn good lean back listening experience today. And it's honestly where I consume most of my music. But what sound does better than Spotify is bring that presence back to music. It is to lean in and appreciate each individual drop as a moment in time to be celebrated and understood and bring context. And then it's everything around the music. It's bringing the sense of community back. It's building, and being able to see this ecosystem flourish together and play a part in that. And it's building an emotional connection in a way that a lot of these streaming services have made music rather faceless. We don't have the same interactions that we used to when it came to music. We're not. It's not held in the same cultural zeitgeist as it used to be, in part because the way in which we consume has just been so passive. And so it is helping us rediscover, I think, a love for music on a very intimate, one-by-one level. And so, yeah, we're early to overuse a common meme. And we may never get there, but I am incredibly encouraged by the early signs that I'm seeing in terms of what it means to build a vibrant community and how you continue to deliver and ship meaningful experiences for them. So, yeah, that is it for the newsletter for this week. Let me know if you guys like the live stream and the video. We're going to do these mostly on Monday mornings in time for the actual newsletter to go out. I have a flight tomorrow for, like I said, Metaverse Miami and Basel. And so wanted to get this out in front of you. If you watch this on Twitter or YouTube, if you give me a shout, let me know if there are any hiccups, everything was good, anything you'd like to see next time. But yeah, until next time, we'll see you guys. I'll be back on Wednesday with the latest podcast drop, Wednesday and Friday. And then we'll be back with a newsletter the following Monday. So thanks again, and we'll see you guys soon.